Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. Welcome to a really fun episode of the Craft to Career podcast. This episode came about because I have a friend who isn't a quilter, but she's a friend and she listens to the podcast. And she sent me an article about a quilter who was on Shark Tank. And I read the article and I was like, okay, we have got to have Mike from Legit Kits on the podcast. So I reached out and thankfully he was game. He's like, let's do it. Let's chat. So I'm really excited for you to meet Mike from Legit Kits, to hear about his business, what he does during the day. You know, he went to college and got a degree, but he has this creative quilting career that has done really well and was even, as I mentioned, on Shark Tank. So with this interesting, look at a quilting career, let's dive in and let me introduce you to Mike from Legit Kits. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. For our listeners, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Mike Odell. I've been a nurse since 1997, been a certified registered nurse anesthetist since 2011. And I've just done art my entire life. It's just been a thing for me. I love playing with different media. I love taking classes just with whatever I run across. When my wife got into quilting, I want to say that was about 2017. She was like, I'm getting into quilting and I want you to leave this alone. And I was like, okay. Like, I'm a regular straight guy. It didn't really hit my radar. But then she started doing a 9-patch quilt and I saw the pixels in there. My first job was with a computer company and I drew images pixel by pixel. So, and I did teach her how to sew with a sewing machine. I did that first.
Okay, cool.
I made a couple of pixel quilts. While doing so, I ran across foundation paper piecing and I just wanted to make something big and gorgeous. And I saw this while I was looking for a topic for a pixel quilt. I was searching for Stormtrooper art and I came across this quilt by Liam Brazier, or this art by Liam Brazier, and I wanted to turn it into a quilt. He's a British artist. The technique he uses is called low poly, so low resolution polygon art. And I loved how that would adapt to sewing because it was all straight lines. Curves are hard to sew. I don't know how to sew a curve. I mean, I've made some scrubs and stuff back when I first got my sewing machine, but I knew I wanted it to be easy. I spent 18 months writing my first foundation paper piece quilt pattern because I just kind of did it myself in my own way, in a way that made sense to me as a beginner. And our stuff is a little different. People are kind of surprised when they open Legit Kits for the first time, but it's all laid out as simply as possible. And it took 18 months to write that pattern because I just solved problems I was creating as I went along. I'd say on average, we have about 75 colors per quilt, all in solids. And so one of the first problems I ran across was, how do you organize that many colors? And I didn't want to number them. That's easy to transpose. And I just came up with, combinations of letters of the alphabet would work. And so the first set of colors were for that Stormtrooper quilt. And once I got to 26, I was like, oh no, I didn't even realize how many colors I had.
Oh, that's amazing.
It ended up being 56 shades. And so I came up with a letter code. And then just to organize those, you just alphabetize them. So I came up with the letter code for the different shades and ended up going. At first, it was just A, B, C as I came across the letters. Here's those pixel quilts. I know it's not good for an audience, but I did a couple of pixel quilts with 1,260 pixels in them each. These were just 4-color quilts. And there's that first paper piecing pattern was that spaceship. So I took from drawing and painting to do these quilts. I always found it easier to grid off. Like if you're going to do a self-portrait, you take a photo of yourself and you draw grid lines on it, and then you can work on those sections. And that was so much easier than doing the whole thing at once. You eventually do the whole thing at once. But with Legit is the same thing. I drew that. The only way I could figure to do this, because I didn't have technical skills. Like I did computer stuff when I was 16, and I'm okay on a computer, but I didn't have time to learn new software. I just wanted to make something cool, so I drew it all by hand. And to make that first quilt, I got large paper from Amazon and a straight 1x2, and I crawled around on the floor and drew the whole thing at full scale. And then I knew I was going to screw it up. That's all part of it. So I knew I'd need to make a copy. And so I cut that thing into 7.5 by 10 inch blocks to make a copy, so that I could scan it on my scanner and it could print on any printer. And that was the way Legit Kit's block technique was approached. I haven't ever used quilting software. I ended up over time hiring graphic design artists to write the patterns. There's a way I wanted the patterns written. I wanted it to look professional, and I wanted to do it my way. And so all of our quilt patterns are still hand drawn by graphic design artists.
That's really cool.
And it's really cool to be paying artists to make art. Like I want everything, every part of what we're doing to be a work of art. And so I want those assembly guides to look crisp and well put together. I want the patterns to look great just as themselves and to be easy to work with. And so by appropriating the name Legit, which came from that first quilt, the Stormtrooper quilt, a woman made it as a tester for me, and her boyfriend walked into the room, saw it laying on the bed, and said, "Babe, that quilt is legit." And I like that so much, I changed the name of my company from this abstract quilting space studio to Legit Kits. And I've just done a couple of those Star Wars patterns. They were for personal use. I've since moved on to stuff that I can have the rights to do. So all of our art is stuff that we own, that we do, obviously.
I'm very curious to hear, how lucrative is this? Because a lot of people are like, I can't earn money as a quilter. Like there's just not money there. So is it profitable for you, like realistically?
I think so. I mean, I have 7 full-time employees now. I got on Shark Tank. Now, back when I first started watching Shark Tank, every time I saw somebody go up there and they're like, $1 million in business, I was like, dude, that guy's rich. And that is a nice way to think about it, but you don't get to keep all that money. For years, I didn't even pay myself from Legit. I've got the anesthesia career, and honestly, it doesn't really do it for me. I'm 50 now. And so I've just been, doing that soul searching you do when you're midlife. And the things that really get me going, there's 2 things that I love doing, and that is being creative and taking risk. And those 2 traits don't work well with anesthesia. And that's why neither one.
Please don't take a risk.
Yeah, no, and I don't do that in my day-to-day job, which is why I still have that job. I'm good at it, but it's you're doing evidence-based practice. You're doing the same thing every day. And I mean, there's some anesthesia providers that'll probably take a lot of offense to that, but I mean, really, when you're taking care of a healthy patient to do a particular type of case, you're doing the same thing. And it's kind of like production work to me. It's just, cranking units out of an assembly line. I make it personal. I joke. I work with pediatrics. I work with kids. It's great, but it's just a job. This stuff though, the doing legit kits, man, it is creativity for days. And you want to talk about risk, start a business. You really get to play with risk every day. So this hits the right points for me.
Yeah, I'm super curious how you grew. Marketing is another big, like you have a cool idea, but now how do you, I mean, Shark Tank, yes, but you've got to earn money before you get on Shark
Oh
Tank.
yeah.
So, which I do, we'll talk about Shark Tank, but how did you like start marketing and getting the word out and getting sales?
Social media. I was just talking to somebody about marketing. I have yet to find a person to do marketing for me that I've worked well with. This has all pretty much been word of mouth. I've boosted posts on Facebook and Instagram, but I've been the primary marketing person for this company the whole time. And I mean, I have ambassadors. I love being on podcasts. I mean, this is great marketing right here. And it's a great way to hear a story. I love listening to podcasts and I love being on them too. But like, I don't have a marketing company. And I think that once I find somebody who can do marketing, it will be far more lucrative because quilters are, according to Craft Industry Alliance, there are 11.1 million dedicated quilters out there. And that's somebody who spends more than 20 hours a week doing it. And that's the type of person that I'm most likely to jive with as a customer. And, when you look at the population of the United States, we've got 350 million people. 11 million hides into 11 of something hides into 350 quite well. So reaching those people is definitely a trick. And one of the things that surprised me about Shark Tank was it got a whole lot of people into our store, but it didn't really get that many. It wasn't this giant tsunami of sales that I thought it was going to be. And it just makes sense if you crunch the numbers. I definitely made an impact in the quilting community by being on Shark Tank, and I love that. I certainly reached some more people by being on television, but if I learned anything, it was don't take out a Super Bowl ad, right? Because talking to the general population, you're just not going to see that many quilters. So I think that marketing in quilting is tricky. It's like most things. It's easy to do badly. Reaching the right people is definitely a trick, and it's mostly just been word of mouth. Whole lot of mouths, whole lot of words.
I mean, that says a lot about your product, though, that it has grown that much by word of mouth. You know it's a good product when that's how it's growing. So that kudos to you. That says a lot.
Thank you. It's got my heart and soul in it. People ask me what my favorite pattern is. We have 67 patterns now, and I've been I am the art director for Legit Kits. I maintain that status. And so they're all my babies. It's hard to pick a favorite. I can tell you I want to do more, but yeah, our customers are the best marketing I can do. And usually when I boost a post on social media, it's to get people to join our Facebook group. Why should they listen to me about buying a quilt kit? I'm selling quilt kits. They should listen to my customers and see what they have to say about it. A rabid fan is the best salesperson you're ever going to have. When we're at a quilt show, there's usually somebody who just loves us, will come to our booth, and will drag people out of the aisles and tell them they've got to try this. You've got to do this. And they mean it. And that's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, from a marketing standpoint, the powerful thing for us has been, I love MJ DeMarco's books, his business books. And one of the things he talks about is create a productocracy, create a product that gets a cult following, which, I mean, of course, everybody would love to do that. But I think that Legit Kits is that way for a lot of people. There are a lot of very hardcore dedicated customers, and I wouldn't be here today if we didn't have them. And I'm eternally grateful for that. And I make sure our staff knows that. And I've gone through a lot of people, because if you don't want to take care of our customers, I don't want to pay you to come work for me. That's because that's what we're doing here. So.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious. So on Shark Tank, okay, I'll ask this question and then we'll dive into Shark Tank because I'm super excited about it. But okay, on Shark Tank, I read that some of the sharks were like, hey, you should scale it back and only offer 20 kits or something like that. Can you talk about that, or like how that conversation went?
Officially, I'm only supposed to talk about what made it to air. I can tell you that Shark Tank is a highly edited. Not everybody understands quilters. I think. And, just stepping back, it was Lori who was bringing that issue up with me. And Lori is the queen of patents. She has the last time I knew how many patents she had, it was over 120. And if you patent a thing, you patent that one thing and you sell the heck out of it while you've got the intellectual property rights. Quilters like variety. I'm just doing everything I think is cool. And our skull quilt, Skulliver, is actually what really changed lanes for me, because at first I was kind of mansplaining quilts to people because I was like, well, what are women going to want to make? And so that was our first dozen or so designs, was me thinking about what women would want to make. And we had some hits with them. But, and honestly, all the designs we've come up with are stuff I think is cool. But with Skulliver, the 106 color skull quilt, that was just something I thought was cool. And I wasn't too sure how it was going to get received. And it was extremely well received. I got emails from people saying, I don't even like skulls, but I bought this quilt kit because I love all the color in it. So
Okay, cool.
that tells you a lot about color too. So, but with Skulliver, I was like, oh, I can do stuff that I think is cool, which felt a lot more genuine than trying to do stuff that I thought other people would want to make.
So, all right, let's do this deep dive Shark Tank. How on earth did you get on the show?
I don't even know. Okay, so the odds were worse than I thought. Their published numbers, they published it in 2023, over 40,000 people applied to get on that show. And when you look at the number of episodes that air and the number of people per episode, about 100 of those people got on television. So
wow.
A lot of people try a lot of times to get on Shark Tank. Okay. I honestly wrote it off for a long time. Everybody's like, oh, you should put your business on Shark Tank. I'm like, Shark Tank goes for the better way to open a can, right? Like they want something that everybody could buy, because that's how you build $1 billion business, is you sell something that everybody wants. And so I'm like, I'm a niche of a niche. Like of quilters, I only appeal to foundation paper piece quilters, and of foundation paper piece quilters, there's some that don't like my stuff at all. And so it's such a small segment that I just didn't see how it would even work. But the 100th person or whoever at work, a buddy of mine, came into his OR to send him to lunch. He's like, dude, why don't you get on Shark Tank? I'm like, I don't see that it even working. He's like, you got a great business. You never stop talking about it. Everybody at the hospital knows I have a quilt company. And that's pretty fun when there's a new person. They're like, go talk to Mike about his quilts. And people are like, what? Because I'm not the kind of guy you would think.
Right.
Anyway, so he was like, oh, it can't be that hard to apply. And so I pulled up their website. Or he pulled up their website. He's like, look, it's 10 questions. And so I looked at those questions and I was like, I have good answers for all those questions. So I was like, go to lunch and I'll talk to you later. And so he came back and I held up my phone that said, we accepted your application. But during the application process, and I don't feel like I'm giving anything away there, it says over 10,000 people apply to get on this show. We will not reach out to everyone. If you don't hear from us, that's what most people get, is nothing.
Yeah.
So I put in the application, warned my wife about it, told her that day. It's like, hey, I applied to get on Shark Tank. And she was like, you're not about to get me, don't even think about getting me on television. I'm not going to go. It's like, okay, that's cool. It's not going to happen anyway, babe. It's such a rare chance. But you could probably assume, and all I can do is speculate, there's a whole lot of weeding out that goes into Shark Tank before you make it to TV. And so I think what really helped me was, I'm a pretty personable person. I of course was scared to death. I think that's just a normal thing. And what I did to prepare for the show, which may have helped, was having published a book before. I wrote and self-published a book that had nothing at all to do with quilting. It's about real estate. But the people that had read my real estate book, because it's about local real estate here in Oklahoma City, people are like, oh, my spouse wants to get into that. I'm like, well, here's a copy of my book, and I just give it to them. You run across those people 6 months later at a party. So this coworker, you've never met their husband, comes up to me. This guy comes up to me, and he's my best friend. And I've never met him, but he read my book. He heard my story. He identified with me. Yep. That's what I did with the Sharks. I listened to all their audiobooks while I was commuting to work, and I got to know them as people. So when I walked on that stage, I genuinely liked everybody there. And I knew about them. I knew what they had failed in at their businesses. I knew when they were up against the ropes. I knew all of them had been in the same place that I was in that day. And so I felt like I belonged on that stage. And I think that showed up there.
Well, and I'm curious, is it really like you really don't see them until they open this door and you walk down the thing, and that's when you've got this
That's when they
pitch.
see your business for the first time. It's
Really? It really
a
is.
first meet. The sharks know nothing about your company at all. So the producers of the show find people they think are going to be entertaining to put on television, either because sometimes probably because their business is collapsing underneath them and they're still like, yay! And those people get chewed to pieces. And then other ones are just interesting. So, I feel like I had a visually compelling product, more so than most anything that's been on that show. They'd never done a quilt pattern company before. And then, there's a lot that I can't talk about with Shark Tank, but I did a lot of interacting with people involved with that show before getting on television. I'll just say that.
I'm also curious when I watch that show. So I'm a true creative, like the numbers, I'm like, bleh. So when they say I would give you a whatever percent stake for this amount, I mean, I'm assuming you've really done the math beforehand and you are aware of what that looks like and means.
I had numbers in my head. I had a stopping point because I knew I wouldn't be able to make that math, because you see people on that show, they're like, oh, well, that's 19%. I'm like, how the heck did you figure that out? Like, I knew what number I could settle for, and that's what I was willing to do. But I'm a creative too. Like, I've got an accountant and a bookkeeper for a reason.
Yes.
And one of my wife's criticisms, when I told her I applied to get on Shark Tank, she's like, you don't know your numbers. I'm like, I'll know them for the show if it's important.
Right.
As a business owner, and I know that this is probably bad to say, but for the most part, I look to see, is there money in checking? Can we cover payroll? Do we have more customers now than we did last time I checked? And if those answers are all yes, let's go. We're good. Yep.
Yeah.
Next. I know there's a whole lot of growth that I'm going to experience because of Shark Tank, because of what it's done for me looking at my own business. It's been great for
tell
that.
Me more.
Well, I mean, like looking at those numbers, I didn't realize before Shark Tank what my cost of customer acquisition was. And that was using somebody that didn't even understand what I was doing.
How did they figure that out? And who did you chat with about that?
Well, I hired a guy to do some marketing for me, and he was putting ads out. They weren't good. The first thing he brought me, it was an AI generated image, which makers hate seeing. Okay.
Yes,
He's like, oh, no, I did this with AI. It's awesome. And it was this AI generated image, and it was 4 extremely elderly women sitting around what looked to be a traditional quilt, but not quite, because it was AI. And all of them had like needles and thread that they were like pulling up. So it was like this old version of a quilting bee. And I'm like, dude, do you not even see what we're selling here? Like, I'm not trying to. I love octogenarians, great people. I don't think that they're my ideal customer base. Honestly, the older quilters tend to not be attracted to quilt kits because they've already got so much dang fabric, So, like, that's not my market, dude. But, I mean, this guy was still able to run ad campaigns, and to do that, it costs us $17 to get a customer. And the average order spend was $130. So, I mean, it made sense. I just need to find somebody who will work with my staff, who won't put stuff on sale, especially stuff we don't even have on stock. Like, I mean, it was a nightmare. I've hired all the wrong people. I've been taking notes for a book for this company because I think it's pretty interesting. And I've been in some pretty nasty scrapes with employees. And one of the chapters is going to be called, "It's Amazing What Can Happen When You Fire the Right People." Because one bad apple, I mean, and especially with a small company, just havoc.
Again, it's not my specialty. I'm a creative. I just want to create.
Yeah.
I don't want to hide there and be a boss, But
but you gotta, because like I've been listening to your podcast, and you gotta hire people if you want to grow. You can be a solopreneur, you can do your thing, and you can probably make a decent living at it. I am the kind of person who wants to have big impact. That's what's fun to me, and so I hire people. There are 5 people in this office right now that are my employees right now, and that's just because one of them's on vacation, one of them's on maternity leave. And there's a part-time person who's just not here today. So like, there's a lot of people behind Legit Kits now, because I've got the graphic team too on top of that. So I've got a lot of employees.
As a small business owner, we know two things. We need a product to sell and we need people to buy it. But how do we actually get people to buy? Here is my little secret. Your biggest sales will come every time you send an email to your audience. That's right. Whether this surprises you or you already know the power of email marketing, one thing is clear. You need the right email platform. And that's why I use Flowdesk. Flowdesk is made for small business owners. And unlike most email providers, Flowdesk does not charge you the more your audience grows. Plus, creating beautiful, easy to read emails has never been easier. So if you are looking for a user-friendly way to collect email addresses and grow your audience, try Flowdesk. And with code QuiltersCandy, you will get 50% off your first year. Experience how easy it is to grow and nurture your audience with Flowdesk. I'm curious. Okay, I know you can't talk a lot about it, but you were in a deal with Kevin, right?
Yes.
And then it fell through from what I read.
Yes.
Can you say any more about that?
Well, so Shark Tank is a handshake deal, right? Like, there is no way you can explain your entire business to me in 30 minutes. It just doesn't work.
Right.
Even if you're talking to somebody who knows business, like, well, you don't know quilt business, because that is different. It's a different animal. And I was just talking with people about this. Like, marketing to quilters is different than marketing to people who want to buy tires or whatever. So it's its own little wonderful world. And so that was a handshake agreement and it was a royalty agreement, but I sell things at all kinds of price points. So the royalty works on the big stuff, but it doesn't work for the little stuff. I mean, we sell some things for $5 a piece and I can't pay you a $10 royalty for that. And so it got into the weeds pretty fast. And I mean, that's more than I'm actually supposed to say. So I'll just say it's complicated, but there's no ill will at all on either party. We did our best to make something work and it just didn't work. And both sides, I believe, are good with that. You know, the trick with doing a royalty where it's only on certain items, well, then the business could just shift and start selling other stuff because you don't got to pay any extra money to sell item X when we're just paying royalty on item Y. And so that's where, well. Yeah,
it's not a great, but you know, it takes a lot of maturity for two people to be able to say, this isn't actually going to work out and to walk away amicably.
Yes.
And like that, you know.
Yeah, there's so much maturity with owning a business, isn't there? Like,
I know. Sometimes I'm like sick of it.
I'm still pretty emotional as a person, but you can't be when you're the boss. There's all kinds of stuff I want to tell certain people, but I don't because I'm.
I have a coach right now that like helps me walk through how to word things, how to say it. I'm like, say that again. Let me write that down. Yeah, actually.
And the humility of being a boss too. I've realized over time, I'm not the best at anything. I keep hiring people that are better at whatever I hired them for. I did the job first. Like I cut the first kits. It took me 12 hours to cut 2 quilt kits. And I was like, I got to hire somebody. I can't do this. I can't be a dad and an employee and a husband and all this and cut all this dang fabric. And of course, now it's way more efficient than it used to be. But yeah, in those early days, I did all the things. And now I just keep giving those jobs away and everybody's better than it's very humbling because it's like, and you're better at that than I ever was.
Right. I know. You find those unicorns. It's like, please don't go anywhere. Yeah. I want you here.
Yeah. I'll tell you about my worst moment in Shark Tank.
Yeah.
So I'm backstage and my makeup's being touched up. And this stagehand back there, he's been doing this forever. And he was like, you know Willie Nelson? I was like, yeah. He said, well, when the makeup lady came up to Willie and I was hanging out backstage with him one time, he looked at her and said, honey, that's a waste of powder. And we were chuckling about that, and so was the lady who was blowing this fan on me and touching up my makeup. While we were doing that, this overhead announcement came in the studio, and it said, doors open in 1 minute, 8 seconds. And I, of course, glanced over my left shoulder, and those were my doors that were about to open. My heart fell out of my chest in that moment. Like I was paralyzed with fear. And I actually thought, where did I go wrong in my life? What did I do to get me here right now? This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. There might as well have been machine guns on the other side of those doors. Like it was a major moment of, oh my God.
I mean, even when you said that, I was like,
that feeling was so intense, but I had that minute and 8 seconds. So, and they count down from 8. That's what the minute and 8 was. And so then the guy starts counting down. But by the time he started his countdown, I'd gathered myself, but then he started counting down and I was like, oh, here we go again. But then the doors open and then you got to start walking. And, during that minute, I was like, okay, you know your pitch, you know your business. You're supposed to be here right now. You got this. Nobody's even going to die if you screw up today, which is definitely different than anesthesia. And I mean, that's one of the many reasons why I want to change careers. Like if I screw up at this job, somebody gets the wrong color of fabric or something, we could fix that in the mail. The life and death stuff at the hospital, like I've just done it so long. I don't get anything out of the adrenaline anymore. And I think that you'll hear this from a lot of healthcare workers who've been through COVID. Like, I'm just ready to change my career up. And so if this is my midlife crisis, this is way better than buying a vet and wrecking my marriage. I'll just take having a business and pursuing world quilt domination.
Yeah, I like it. So is the goal then to leave your nurse anesthetist job?
Good job with the word, by the way. Nice.
Thank you. I struggle with that.
You're a natural podcaster.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to. But it's golden handcuffs. I got 3 kids. They're in grade school through high school. They're all smart, so they're going to end up in college. I got to pay for that. And I'm in my 50s. I don't want to be uncomfortable. And so if this business is going to overtake my career, it's got to get pretty decent size to be able to afford me. Right now, I do legit 1 day a week at the office. I'm always working on legit. I saw something on the internet that I only work 1 day a week and have made this multi-million-dollar business. And that's a fun thing to think, but I've been doing this, you know how it is, thinking about it all the time, waking up in the middle of the night, not sleeping because of it. Yeah. I'm able to dedicate 1 day a week to meeting people and all this stuff until like my kids get out of school this afternoon. But that's been a major commitment from this company to me. Like just paying 1 day a week's anesthesia salary to me has made me a pretty expensive employee. So we got a lot of growing to do if I'm going to break those chains. But I mean, if I do anesthesia for a living and do this part-time and it makes as many people happy as it is now, that's still a win. I can't lose with this. So that's great.
Do you have dreams of like opening shops or just selling more product, or how do you envision it growing if you could make your perfect story?
I would like to see legit kits on shelves at local quilt shops. And we're actually going to start doing some smaller designs, some more onboarding type patterns. A lot of people are not exactly excited about jumping into a $400 quilt kit that has 1,500 pieces and they've never tried paper piecing before. There are some people who do that, and I love those people. They're so much fun. Yes. Back when I started doing legit, I made sure that there was a new foundation paper piece quilter in every single testing group we did. So there was somebody who'd never done FPP before who became a tester for that particular design and then did the design. And then, they had a major sense of accomplishment with it. And I did too. And that's how we built the product. I asked quilters, what do you want? And they told me, and that's legit kits. And so I get these emails from people all the time. Oh my gosh, it's like you were thinking about me. And yeah, we were. I'm like, I wanted to know what you want. Like, I wasn't really a quilter before I started writing these patterns. So I love this world, but I needed some help. And so I just asked the people who do it all the time, what would you want? If you could make a quilt kit, what would you want in it? And what would you like done with it? And that's how we came up with our enough fabric guarantee. If you buy one of our kits and you run out of a color, you don't even have to give us an excuse. Just let us know you didn't get enough of something, you cut it wrong. People are like, my cat ate it. But we will send you another hunk of that fabric in the mail at no charge if you buy one of the full kits from us. Because I want you to finish this thing. Because when you finish this thing, you're going to show everybody you know, and you're going to show your quilt guild, and then they're going to want to do it too. So like, it cost me a little hunk of fabric, and you got this quilt done.
Yeah, this would be cool to be like Legos, where you've got the little kid version, and then you've got the master builders, and you just play. You walk into the Lego store and like, ooh, what should I get now? And yeah, I like it. Yeah. But it's intimidating. My son has all these Legos, and even me, I'm like, could I build like the cube over there? Like, it's intimidating. But once you jump in, you get addicted, and yeah.
Yeah. We actually list the number of pieces on our quilts just like it's on Lego. And we're still struggling with the difficulty level. We have dots on our quilt kits. It's all the same technique. Some of them are a lot more seams than others. And so that's kind of how we rate them, but it's not a perfect system yet. I'm not happy with it.
Do you know the whole quilting world that way? I mean, because I teach like how to write traditional quilt patterns, and people will ask, is there a system to rate like beginner, advanced, whatever? I'm like,
yeah, you just make it up. Yeah.
I know. If you want to put it on there, it's your best guess.
Yeah, for us, it's like the amount of time, I guess, is more what it is than beginner versus expert or whatever.
Yeah. So if you had one of our listeners who's thinking, man, I'd really love to just start this creative business of mine, what advice would you share with them?
Keep trying. I mean, as lame as that is, the people who make it are the ones who just didn't freaking quit. So just keep trying. If you write a pattern and it doesn't work, write another one. We're still selling the first pattern that the Fox was our first non-Star Wars design, the one that we first started selling. We still sell those all the time. Listen to these podcasts, read business books incessantly. Don't stop learning, because maybe you think business is a bad word, but if you're going to make something to reach a lot of people, you need a business. And you may think money is dirty, but money is the reason businesses exist. It's the lifeblood of it. And my employees wouldn't be here today if I wasn't paying them money. They've got other things to do with their lives. So charge appropriately too. So many people, so many quilt pattern writers put 300 hours into writing a freaking pattern, and then they charge $5 for it. Like,
or free, or yeah,
charge what it's worth. Make it worth your time. If you do something that is done well, do your best possible work, and then charge appropriate for it. People will pay it.
So, okay, I'm super interested on this topic of the pattern testers. I actually, I don't know, a year or so ago, posed the question, should we pay our pattern testers? And it actually blew up in a really negative way. People were very upset. Yeah. Like, you have to pay them. You have to pay them. But in my experience, there's so many people who don't care to be paid, or in yours, they are begging to pay to do it, And so that's very interesting to hear your perspective on the pattern testers, because I'm all for paying people, hiring people, paying people what they're worth. But there is a supply and demand, and people who are very happy to do this to pay to do it in your case,
Yeah. And it's not like they're writing the pattern for you. It's not like they're making your product. It's not like you're saying, pay me and I'll send you fabric and you cut it up and you ship it across the country on your own dime and you get to say you're part of legit. No, you're getting from me anyway, you're getting a functional frickin' pattern that might have 3 typos on it in a part that doesn't even matter to most people. It's down in the cut guide someplace, and it says piece F3 sub part 7 is this color, but it's actually another color, and that's all labeled on the pattern and everything else elsewhere anyway. And that's just a function of us having handwritten patterns. Is there's occasional typos. So I didn't vociferously jump into that debate because there was a lot of emotion behind it, and my business is my business. Like, okay, if you demand to be paid as a pattern tester, right, good luck, first of all.
Right, that's my thing. Yeah.
And people were wanting to be the first one to do it, and they were mad that I wouldn't take their money. So I understand that women tend to sometimes charge less than they should for what they're doing.
Right.
And I get that. Yeah. And there's some exploitation potential there. But none of my pattern testers ever express any discontent with that. And anytime anybody, like there were times when people were like, I can't actually do this, they'd send the kit back. We'd even pay to get it shipped back to us, and we'd give them back their money. Like no hesitation. It wasn't a profit thing for me. It was a way to, for one, like, hey, I'm sending you $200 worth of fabric. And once it's gone out the door, there's nothing I can do about that. So, and I needed to test the full kit because I needed to make sure you had enough fabric. I needed to make sure it all matched right. So that's why I did what I did. But now it's a set number of people. I don't let new testers in. They've been testing for us for a while. I tend to pick people who are prolific on social media. They're going to advertise it. They get the kit for free now, which is, $400 deal. And they test it. They get to be the first to make it, and they couldn't be happier about it. So I don't feel like people, and shoot me if you want to, but I don't feel like people should have to pay just because somebody else thinks you should pay somebody doesn't mean you need to pay somebody. The people who are demanding that the pattern writers pay pattern testers ain't pattern writers.
I know, right?
Write your own pattern, then pay somebody else to test it, and then tell me how you feel about that.
Right. And I have before hired someone to make a quilt top. The thing is, if you want to get paid, you've got to be that good and a demand, So, but in your case, it is unique because you are shipping such there's value in what you're shipping, I mean, there's value in a pattern as well, but like the fabric.
Right. But there's inherent value in one of our kits coming to your door.
Yeah. Well, this is a super awesome conversation for our listeners who want to find you or learn more about Legit Kits. Where should they go?
We have a Facebook group for Legit Kits. Join on in, check it out. I mean, it's a great way to see other people doing our quilt kits. That's where I drop everything first, is in that Facebook group. And I'm on it all the time. If you want to ask me a question, you can probably catch me. I've got, my email is mike@legitkits.com. It's really tricky. I show up at the big quilt shows when I can. I'm still working fairly full time, so it's not always easy to break away. But yeah, the best way to see us is just search online. If you look at YouTube, you'll see hundreds of videos about us. Same thing with Instagram, Facebook. We've got a TikTok channel. It's not as active, and I'm actually kind of glad that a lot of quilters don't skirt around social media from one platform to the next. A lot of them tend to be on Facebook, which is great for me because I'm getting older and all the new technology stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah. Can't keep up with it all,
Yeah, there's too many apps.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your unique perspective and your business and just a little insight into one path of taking this passion, and that came from a very unusual way. I think a lot of people assume all quilters who have a career started off just quilting and loving it, and just such a unique route to get to this career that you started. And listeners, if you are enjoying this podcast, can you take just a moment and leave a review for the podcast? There's a recent review from Kathy C32, and she left a 5-star review about the last episode on making SMART goals and how helpful that this was for her. Leaving a review for the podcast is the best thing you can do for yourself and for the podcast. It helps it to be seen by others. It gives me the motivation to keep recording episodes, and it really attracts guests, good quality guests, to come and be on the show. So take just a moment in Apple Podcasts or in Spotify, go down to the review area, and you can tap 1 through 5 stars, and you can even click where it says write a review, and you can write an actual review. So thank you so much for being here. There will be a brand new episode coming soon. There are some fun guests coming and some insights from my own business and career that will be coming shortly. So stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe to the Craft to Career podcast. You'll be notified every time a new episode is released, and we'll see you back here when the next episode is available. Take care.